Good morning, colleagues. Yesterday in my speech, I spoke to you about the trauma of children and what we need to do collectively as police leaders to reduce that trauma by working in partnership, particularly with local authorities, with Children's Services Department. What Karen and I are going to do for the next 4 minutes is just bring you up to speed on the brilliant work that we have been doing in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. What we know is that adverse childhood experiences are a direct link towards criminality in a number of cases. Most people can survive 2 or 3 adverse childhood experiences, such as a grandparent dying or parents getting divorced. But when you start getting to 7 or 8 adverse childhood experiences, ACEs or more, and you also do not feel loved and supported in the way that you should do, and you don't have a key parent that you can lean on all of the time, that means your resilience score goes down and therefore your life outcomes significantly drop. Health outcomes, criminality, all of the things that we've mentioned previously. I was really thankful to have secured £480,000 through my office and the brilliant work that Karen did back in September of 2021. With that £480,000, we trained 2,000 public sector workers across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, midwives, GPs, health visitors, teachers, carers, primary school workers and nursery play workers as well. What we're going to do now is play you a short video to show you the work that we've been doing.
We don't seem to have our remote. Is anyone able to play the video, please? Thank you.
A trauma-informed practitioner is someone with an in-depth understanding and knowledge of trauma. We understand the prevalence of trauma, we understand the way that that might impact on people, on the way that they feel about themselves and the way that they feel about the people that they come into contact with. So we use that knowledge to support and mentor others in their practice, enabling them to look reflectively at what they're doing with young people or adults that might have a trauma history.
We have a pilot with Hampshire Constabulary at the moment where we have trauma-informed practitioners from partner agencies that are coming out with frontline officers. We've been responding to incidents with them and observing those incidents and then debriefing on the go a lot of the time in the police cars about how they felt and their responses. We've also been doing more formal debriefs with them at the station around some of the more complex cases. And there's a reflective practice behind that, discussing what they've witnessed, what these people might be going through, and the reflective practice around the police officer's approach as well. A lot of that is reflecting on good practice and the things that we've noticed that they might not pick up on, and enabling them to understand what they've done really well so that they can do it again in similar situations in the future, but also asking them how they felt about that incident for themselves and whether they noticed anything in their own reaction so that we're mitigating the impact of that trauma on them as well. And it's not set up in a way that they're providing feedback to criticise, it's just to discuss. If we can have a discussion around the way we're doing things and how that can affect people, and also what these people are going through and how that can affect us, that's the idea of it, just to raise that kind of informed approach.
Those trauma-informed practitioners, people that understand what's going on behind the scenes, the fear, the anxiety, how you need to deal with that, how you need to address it, explaining to the police officers how they see it through the lens of that therapeutic counsellor, that trained person around the trauma-informed work. So the police then start to adopt those practices, look at things from a slightly different light, ask the right questions when they're walking into those troubled homes.
So carrying trauma isn't an excuse to commit crime, but it can help explain why people might feel and behave the way that they do. One of our trauma-informed practitioners said that they saw more distressing incidents in the few months that they were out with the police than they would otherwise have expected to see across their whole life. So if you multiply that exposure by a 30-year career in policing, it isn't hard to see how police might be affected by compassion fatigue and vicarious trauma. And that's without all of their other life experiences. So the benefits of trauma-informed policing, it doesn't just benefit the public in terms of breaking down barriers to accessing services, it also benefits the police in terms of self-care, emotional regulation, and how they support each other at all ranks. Our programme is being evaluated by Liverpool John Moores University. And to leave you with a quote by Gabor Mate, trauma isn't just what happens to you, it's what happens inside of you because of what happens to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're going to sit down?
Thank you, Karen and Donna. And I hesitate to interrupt, but we're trying to keep to 4 minutes for each speech. Thank you. Next, we're going to hear from Merseyside Police Chief Inspector Rob Budden on the anti-racism training at Merseyside. Thanks. Rob, you have 4 minutes.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Rob Budden. I'm a Chief Inspector working in People Services in Merseyside Police, and I'm responsible for the delivery of our local police race action plan. Delighted today to talk to you a bit about our anti-racism training programme, which is mandatory for all officers in Merseyside that we're currently rolling out. Firstly, I'd just like to give you a flavour of the training.
We're proud to be one of the leading anti-racism charities in our region, and we've spent the last 17 years developing a thoughtful and comprehensive approach to tackling racism in our communities. One of the ways in which we do this is through education and interactive engagement. So we have developed a training program for the force to cover topics of racism, anti-racism, the historical context and its links to policing, all with the aim of raising the levels of awareness and understanding of every police officer and member of staff.
I've just finished the anti-racism training. Really, really great session and some good conversations and hopefully lots of thinking that people will be driving home now, reflecting on that session.
This training is all about how we can empower officers and staff, give them the tools to try and have some of those difficult conversations, think about how stereotypes work, try and understand some of those communities' experiences and hopefully give them the tools to be able to respond to those needs in a better way.
It was a really enjoyable session. It's really hard-hitting, it's really uncomfortable to sit through some of that, to hear of the impact on policing, on our black communities. But really important message, we need to understand why trust and confidence has been so severely impacted in our communities.
Now, the reality is that there is a real trust deficit and lack of confidence in policing amongst the black community of Merseyside. It is crucial that black expertise in anti-racism and black voices are not only heard, but included in the anti-racist changes that need to take place within Merseyside Police. In order to do this, Merseyside Police need to continue to work alongside community-based organisations, anti-racism charities such as ours, to achieve this goal.
Okay, thanks for watching. In view of the timescales, just a few headlines. So this project, this isn't something that can be a lift and a shift into other forces. We've had other organisations speak to us about that, and what we've said is this is in effect a blueprint so that you can collaborate with a local group in order to get a product that best meets the needs of your community. This is it's very important to view this amongst a programme of work, so a wider response to the Police Race Action Plan. And one of the things we did was the consultants in the video are part of our stakeholder meetings so that they can realise that they're not just a shop front for the force, but actually they're engaged in everything from use of powers to community engagement to dealing with underprotected communities. Leadership has been a massive part of this, so we rolled this out to our executive leaders group, and it was from their feedback they wanted their staff to get this same training. And we've had real drive from the chief officers who, although had the initial training, will still attend sessions periodically to demonstrate to staff the importance of this in line with our force strategy. Really important to look at this in terms of a performance framework, to look at indicators. So we will relate this to our data around stop search, use of force, even down to grievances that might have race and inclusion as a subject, civil litigation for stop search. Accompanying this, we've got some academic work, I'll finish up just now, which is to independently evaluate the programme and also to think about how we integrate this with our leadership approach going forward. I would finish on just asking, when considering this business case for your organisation, it's useful to think about also the business case for policing remaining the same. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Rob. Do come and take a seat. Fascinating to hear. Thank you. Next up, it's Chief Inspector James Kitchen from West Yorkshire Police, who's going to talk about Project Spotlight. Hey! Welcome.
So yeah, hello, I'm James Kitchen from West Yorkshire Police, and this is Project Spotlight, so thank you for giving me this opportunity today. So Project Spotlight set about modernising hotspot policing to bring physical and digital world together, hotspots which are data-driven and community-focused. So we identified 3 small streets in Leeds City Centre that accounted for 15% of the force's street-based serious violent crime. And these streets were packed with bars, clubs, pubs and food establishments, with the main users being 16 to 30-year-olds. So how do you influence the behaviour of young people who are out having a good time whilst building trust and confidence? Well, to start with, the physical patrols needed to be different. They needed to be active rather than passive, engaging, friendly with officers, talking to the public, explaining why they were there, what they were trying to achieve. We made them changeable with uniform and non-uniform, and reduced the amount of time to about 20 minutes, with officers pulsing in and out at different points during that evening. But we knew very quickly that physical patrols were no longer going to be enough, and we needed to do something different. So people spend an increased amount of time on digital devices, on average about 4.5 hours a day on a mobile device, and young people spending considerably more. So therefore, I collaborated with a digital marketing company to really understand the best ways of being able to engage with young people in this kind of nighttime economy space. So we developed 3 distinctive strands. The first was to influence potential perpetrators, utilising a psychological nudge to make them think about the actions they were taking. The second was to focus on the public, to get them to speak up and get them to report incidents and behaviours that were uncomfortable, building trust. And the third was to focus on the location with the simple messaging that we are here, increasing the feelings of safety and surveillance. So the million-dollar question is, how do you get this messaging to young people who don't tend to want to engage with us? And that's by using something that influences us every day, and that is targeted advertising. So we mapped out the locations where we wanted our targeted messaging to be, and we utilised paid-for social media space to directly deliver our messaging to young people's social media feeds if their phone's GPS came into our hotspots. This allowed us to target the people we wanted with the messaging we wanted at a time that we wanted. If the young person clicked onto our content, then it took them to a dedicated microsite with more information about the project, links to policing and links to reporting functions within West Yorkshire Police and Crime Stoppers. So through Snapchat and TikTok alone, within 8 weeks, we landed over 5.5 million impressions, and that was 10,000 click-throughs to site. So not only was the engagement significantly more than traditional methods, the analytics allowed us to understand who had engaged with us at what times and what content was most engaging. So taking this preventative approach, in only 84 deployments across a 6-month period, the 3 hotspots witnessed a 35.8% reduction of all crime. And a similar reduction in the crime harm score. There was also a diffusion of benefits in that the displacement with a wider area and a reduction of 20% of total crime. So in less than 8 weeks, the targeted messaging managed to imprint over 5.5 million and engage with 10,000 young people who attended those locations, hopefully being the start of a new relationship with those young people. So I will leave you with the words of our external evaluator. These aren't my words, but the external evaluators. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Jane. Good heavens. Somebody who actually came in under 4 minutes. You need a job in news. Thank you very much indeed, James. That was fascinating. A targeted approach, really interesting. Finally, we're going to hear from Katie Bourne, who's the PCC for Sussex, who's going to talk about Pegasus. Hi, Katie.
Thank you very much. I'll put my stuff on my chair. Don't start me yet.
Don't worry.
Great.
Thank you.
There for me. Super. Thanks very much. I'm conscious I'm standing between you and coffee, so they told me an hour would be fine. No, I'm just joking. Pegasus. So You've heard the stats around shoplifting and why this is important to all of us. You've heard from the Shadow Home Secretary this morning, also repeating the importance of shoplifting. So it's right up on government's agenda, but more importantly, shoplifting is up on the public's agenda, and it really matters to them. And if one thing cuts through around confidence in policing more than anything else, it's the crisis we have in shoplifting. So, £800 million last year, the British Retail Consortium reckoned that shoplifting cost our top retailers. They came to me about 10 months ago, and they said, Katie, we've got two asks of you. One, we want this up the government's agenda, and two, how do we get into 43 front doors in policing? Because our frustration at the moment is, and there's some good work going in some force areas, but we have to go individually to every force every time we have one of these organised crime gangs. So who's doing the shoplifting? Well, you've got three types. You've got your opportunists, tend to be young, and as it says on the tin, they're opportunists. Then you've got your prolific offenders, those well-known individuals who come back time and time again. These two tackled locally by the force, but the ones that really are getting to our major retailers are the serious and organised crime gangs. And do you know there is nowhere at the moment across policing where any of us or any of you, Chief Constables out there today, can tell us how many organised crime gangs are operating across the retail environment today. So that's how Pegasus was born. 13, well now it's 14, of the top retailers, all listed up there on the screen behind me, have decided to put their hands in their pockets and support a team within Opal. Now, Opal, as you know, is the operational side for policing that tackles the serious crime, acquisitive crime that's going on, and led by Chief Constable Amanda Blakeman, who I reached out to. Her Chief Superintendent, Jim Taylor, came up with a plan, a team, a number of people that he needed, some analysts, some intelligence managers that he could hire and put within Opal to actually build that serious organised threat picture. And they're the three objectives there on the screen set out by the Pegasus group. And that's how Pegasus was born. We launched 2 weeks ago at number 10. It's part of the National Retail Crime Strategy. It will affect every police force in the country. And Pegasus is a unique partnership. It's a first for the retail environment, but again, we have all of our major retailers behind us on this. They want to help policing. They want us to succeed in this. And so we need that picture, because unless we can measure what's going on, policing can't tackle it. So Pegasus is now airborne, and it is flapping its wings to a regional organised crime unit near you soon. They will be packaging up those intelligence packages, tracking those OCGs that are operating, and asking you to do your bit and go after them and enforce the law. That's it. Thanks very much for listening.
Thank you very much indeed. Came in even under the previous contribution. Amazing. I'm clock watching like crazy here because of all the things we've got to fit in, but we have a couple of quick questions on Slido. Thank you very much indeed, Katie, for that. First one, both to Donna and Karen, a question from Karina Thomas, trauma-informed practitioners. Has work been focused just in safeguarding, or has it been utilised across other high-risk roles such as roads policing?
So they are placed at the moment in response teams as the kind of front-facing officers that deal with anything and everything. So not just safeguarding for all types of crime, but not specifically in roads policing at the moment. No, just response and patrol.
Okay, thank you. A question for Project Spotlight. To James, how much did this cost? I mean, the benefits and the data that you've gathered as a result of it is quite stark, isn't it? But what did it cost to put in place?
Yeah, well, the actual cost of social media, the actual delivery of that actually cost £4,000 of paid for advertising space. Obviously, the policing response and the pros around it was an innovation fund bid, but it could have been done out of normal policing, and the whole idea was to prove the concept of it. So the only additional cost was to create the actual, I suppose, the website and the content, which was a little bit more money, and that cost about £15,000 to £20,000. But the actual delivery of it actually cost £4,000.
Okay, Thank you for that. Just a quick question to you, Rob, about the anti-racism training. It was interesting you were talking about it being a blueprint that could be moved over, but it is absolutely in that contact and understanding the whole context of communities that blueprint presumably then has to be adapted. I mean, it is one of those things that works well when you know the key people that can help you deliver on it.
Yeah, so it was our stakeholders that wanted us to work with a local provider. There's a big evidence base to suggest that if you work with a local provider, you'll create that cultural competency in your organisation, and then that will have a knock-on effect with kind of routine aspects of policing that we deal with.
Yeah, so it's just knowing the context in which you're operating very deeply. A question, Jonathan Jardine is submitting a lot of questions. Is Jonathan in the room? No, he's sitting at home typing away furiously. Does Pegasus, Katie? That's the question of the morning now, isn't it? Who is Jonathan Jardine? Does Pegasus, somebody knows, sorry, Katie, does Pegasus include diversion work, drug treatment or other components to prevent reoffending? Jonathan Jardine would like to know.
Well, the three objectives were up on the screen and hopefully everyone had time to read them. The final one is once those intelligence packages are collected, once policing has a picture of a single version of that threat from the OCGs that are operating, then they can talk about enforcement and also prevention work within it. But that's a bit further down the line. The first objective is we've got to get a picture of how many of these gangs are operating. Because as I said before, if you can't measure it, you can't tackle it.
Yeah, and it's interesting how data plays such a key role in those talks this morning. We're out of time, unfortunately, but we've got a question to each project, hopefully.